David's success in the industry has been documented pretty much everywhere in the sports media, right? To look at just his record-breaking deals that he's done in his career, from Earl Thomas to Kelechi Osemele, Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, who we're going to talk about today, Jalen Ramsey, Derwin James, Jalen twice, Thomas is another one.
Bobby Wagner, Buda Baker, Derwin James,
Kevin
Antoine
Byard.
Winfield Jr.
We could go down the list. So
we could do a whole podcast just
You keep
naming
going.
names.
I'm not mad.
all these record-breaking deals, right?
Welcome back to episode 7 of the Athletes First Family Podcast, the quarterback series. I am Athletes First CEO Brian Murphy, joined once again by my co-host AJ Stevens, arguably one of the best negotiators in the business, but David probably would disagree with that. Welcome back, AJ.
Thanks, Murph. Happy to be back. On this podcast, we discuss Athletes First success in representing quarterbacks in the NFL. We currently have $1.4 billion of quarterback deals on our books. On today's episode, we have the agent who represents two of those players, Deshaun Watson and Jordan Love, David Mulugheta. Welcome, David.
Happy to be here.
Yep. Athletes First equity partner, David Mulugheta. Legend, as we're going to get into. But thanks for joining us, David. It was tough getting into the office today with all your fans outside blocking the stuff. But yeah, so we're gonna jump into your journey from where you grew up to super agent. But I want to start with, I know it's super important to you. Tell us about your current family, your wife, kids.
I am married. I have a beautiful wife, Andrew Mulugheta, and we have 3 lovely kids, DJ, Dallas, and Davin. So, yeah, family man here.
Yep. Well, it's one of the things that I'm most impressed about you is that you've become the best at what you do without sacrificing family at all. I mean, family's always been first to you, and that's super impressive. But let's go back to the beginning. Like, tell us about your childhood. Where did you grow up, and what was that family like?
Yeah, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. Both my parents were immigrants from a small country in East Africa, Eritrea, and they migrated here or immigrated here in the late 70s. My older brother, Mina, was born in Rome, Italy, actually.
Wow.
And his first couple of years of life were spent in Rome, and they moved to the States about 1979 or 1980, somewhere in there. I was born shortly thereafter in Dallas, Texas. I have a younger brother, Abel, and a younger sister, Niat. And I'm probably the dumb one of the group, to be honest with you. My older brother, was kind of, the guy that set the standard in our household, right? Both my parents never even graduated, never got past elementary school, let alone going to college. So my older brother kind of was the standard bearer, and he graduated high school, obviously, and went on to Texas A&M University, got his undergrad in engineering, I believe. And then went on to SMU, where he got his MBA, and kind of set the standard for myself, and kind of had somebody look at us like, okay, this is kind of what I need to do. And then my younger brother graduated from University of Texas at Austin, where I went, and then he got his his JD from SMU as well. And my little sister, who I think would be we consider her the smarty pants of the family, the true standard bearer, I would say. She did her undergrad at Harvard University. And currently we just graduated with her MBA from Stanford. So,
Wow.
Yeah, man. So tough group there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know.
so
I would agree.
but I'm ranked number 4 out of the group. So,
Yep, I would agree with that, but that's fine.
Yeah, man, it's a tough
And
group.
you're number 2 in this group, so that's fine. You got that. But so, David, tell me about that. So your parents came over, and they didn't go to high school, whatnot. And how did they influence you all to be so successful academically?
Yeah, I think for them, coming from a at the time war-torn country, and having to do a lot just to make it to the United States, right? For them, it was like, hey, we've done all these things to put you guys in a position to be successful, or at least have a shot at being successful. And it was always great having a mom and dad at home, obviously, and just seeing the work that they put in on a day-to-day. My dad had 2 jobs us growing up. My mom, she used to clean homes. So just kind of seeing everything that they put into it, and it was always about us, always about the family. I think it was just for us, the expectation was that we took advantage of everything, the opportunity that we had being here in the States. And like I said, once my older brother kind of set that standard of, what that looked like, for us, it was easier to follow.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, did you enjoy school, or did you feel like it was something you wanted to do and you want to do well and make them proud?
I think it was more the latter, right? I was good at school. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
Like most kids, I enjoyed going to school, being around friends. But as far as the learning aspect of it, I I say I had a really good memory where I would read something once and I could remember it. So I was lucky in that way, where maybe I wasn't super passionate about school, but luckily, for whatever reason, I was good at school. So I was able to maintain good grades. Had my screw ups like most kids, but I was able to find a way to make it through that and graduate. And I went to University of Texas at Austin, which I think kind of for me, it was a dream to go there, it being the flagship, university in the state of Texas. But also, I always wanted to do something. Even though I looked at my brother as a role model, and I always wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps in ways. When he went to A&M, I was like, oh, I got to go to Texas. I want to do kind of the opposite in that manner. So he was an Aggie, and I was a Longhorn. So that was pretty cool. And we still have our battles to this day.
You wanted to be unique.
I want to be a little different. I want to kind of, in a way, have my own road. So yeah, I want to go to University of Texas.
That does not surprise me at all. But did you play sports in high? AJ claimed to be a 3-sport athlete before,
Whoa,
in high school, did
I was.
Okay, yeah, I played a few sports in high school. Unfortunately, didn't get too far. I played baseball. I mean, I even wrestled. I wrestled at 103 pounds my freshman year in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I didn't hit my growth spurt, unfortunately, until after my junior year. I was about 5'6", 120 pounds until my junior year of high school.
Wow.
In the summer after my junior year of high school, I sprung up to 6 foot and, about 145, 150, which is not huge, but where I was coming from, in about 4-month period, gaining 6 inches was cool. But I was never big enough at the time to play football. I loved football, grew up in, Dallas in the 90s, the Troy Aikman, Michael Smith, Irvin era where we were winning Super Bowl. So I was always a football fan.
Yeah.
But physically, there just wasn't a place, I could fit on a football field. So never played football. But no, yeah, I was definitely, I played sports growing up.
Awesome. And so you went to UT.
Mm-hmm.
You loved it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And when you went to UT, did you go there? Did you know at that point you wanted to be a sports agent, or you had no idea?
No, not at all. I didn't even know what a sports agent was at the time. I went to UT, and again, going back to my parents being immigrants, all they knew was doctor, lawyer, engineer. So
Yep.
pick one of those three. We know those, they get paid well, right? You guys can be successful. So I was scared of blood, so I wasn't going to do the doctor route. And so, and I was a little, I won't say a little, but I enjoyed talking. I was a little loquacious as a kid. So I thought, hey, I feel like I could be a lawyer. They do a lot of talking. So that was kind of my mindset. I want to be a lawyer. But University of Texas had a really good business school. So I want to get into the business school. So I actually I went to University of Texas and I majored in business, got my BBA from there. But yeah, no, at no point did I ever think about being a sports agent. That didn't come along till, toward, I would say, probably the back end of my college career.
Oh, wow. And then when you were in college, you said you saw both parents work hard, do everything they could to make some money. Did you do some work in college? How did you make some money?
Yeah, man. So when I was at UT, we had pretty good football teams, and like you said, it was like, how do I figure out a way to make some money? I didn't come, from money, so it was like, how do I figure it out? So had a lot of friends of mine that played football. When I first got there, a couple guys that had went to my high school. Montreal Flowers, Hodges Mitchell, the different guys were on the team. So, had a relationship with a bunch of guys. So we just started brainstorming. I was like, hey, if I start throwing parties, after the football games, that might be a way I can make some money. So I started doing that. I want to say that was probably my junior year in college. I started to do that and did it pretty well. We were winning games. You get the football team there. You get, crowd follows. You're able to make some money. So that's kind of how I got. I would say that was probably the very, very initial seed that was planted in my agent career, right? Unknowingly started developing a lot of relationship with a lot of football players at Texas and, kind of just steamroll from there.
It's funny because I think guessing, but at that time you weren't befriending them because you wanted to be a sports agent. It's just natural relationships.
No, natural relationships. And then, like I said, just throwing the events, obviously, you meet more guys. And again, I knew a few guys on the team already, so it was just more of a natural thing. And like I said, I didn't even know what a sports agent was at the time.
Yeah.
That didn't come until, after I graduated undergrad. I wanted to go to law school, but I took a couple years off, started my own, had a small marketing business that I started while I was still throwing the events. And one of my good friends at the time, Jamal Charles, was wrapping up school and heading into the NFL at the time. And I met his agent, Andrew Kessler. I met him in Austin at some point. And at that point, I came and visited Jamal while he was training here in California for the draft and met a couple other people here, athletes first. And Andrew offered me an internship and kind of one thing led to another, and we're here today.
Yeah. And then you left UT, you took a couple years off, and then you did go to law school.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. I skipped that part.
Yeah. Did you go to law school at that point?
Well, actually, no. So I was going to law school, and then I met that spring before I started law school, actually, is when I met Andrew. And I came out here, and I was to California while Jamal was training, got offered an internship. And at that point is when I started thinking, like, hey, man, this is something that I might, have some interest in. Obviously, I was a huge football fan. I enjoyed sports growing up, and I figured, hey, this is a way I could use my law degree. I plan on going to law school anyway, and I can use this law degree and also stay involved in sports. So kind of seemed like a win-win to me.
Yeah, University of Nebraska Law School?
Yep, I went to University of Nebraska Law School.
So how do you settle on University of Nebraska?
Man, so I wanted to go to Texas. I took the LSAT late in December, and Texas does a rolling admission. That was back when in 2008, I believe, is when kind of the economy crashed. So everybody was coming to Texas, and just, as it was going to I was probably going to get deferred to the next year. So I was like, no, I don't want to wait. I want to go ahead and go to law school. So I looked up top 100 law school programs, and Nebraska was at the time, they were in the top 100. I can't remember the number at the time, and they were still accepting applications. And I talked to my brother, and we were just like, hey, man, it's somewhere we can go, get law school, but at the same time, somewhere you can actually focus. Law school obviously is a grind, somewhere that you don't know a lot of people, somewhere you can really lock in and get it done. So decided to go to the university. Luckily, they had a good football program at the time as well, so that didn't hurt. And yeah, man, spent 2.5 years there, graduated a semester early, and enjoyed my time at UNL.
So you wanted to go to a law school where there wasn't a lot going on, and conversely, I went to Tulane in New Orleans, where there is a ton going on.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
I had heard a lot about law school, a lot of stories about, how difficult it was, especially your first, your 1L year. So for me, it was like, okay, this makes sense. And it's somewhere I can apply to now. And obviously I got in, so it worked out.
Cool.
So you came out, you met Jamal Charles, you met Andrew Kessler, who's going to be on a podcast with you later about Jordan Love. You did 2 internships, right?
I did.
Back-to-back summers at Athletes
Not
First.
back-to-back, actually.
Oh, no.
No. So I did internship going into my first year of law school, prior to my first year of law school. And I always tell the story. I did an internship, and it made me never want to be an agent at the time, right? Because, I was getting lunch orders and print this and bind this. And I was like, hold on, this is not what I signed up for, right? So I did that internship before I started law school. And then after my first year of law school, I actually didn't do I didn't come back. And after my second year of law school, I ended up doing an internship. Spoke to Andrew Kessler, who, again, will be on the podcast later or another date. But spoke to Kess, and he kind of told me if I come back, he allowed me to shadow him and kind of get a better feel for what being an agent was. So I came back. That was after, like I said, after my second year of law school. And that's when I really knew, like, okay, this is something I do want to do.
Yeah,
this feels like Kessler is recruiting you at this point, where you don't even really want to be a sports agent. He's like, no, you need to come back and try this again.
Yeah, I would say Kess probably saw something in me before I did, as far as the industry, right? And again, I didn't know much about the industry. But I've talked to Kess about that since, and he was just like, hey, your ability to kind of relate to people that come from different backgrounds and just kind of those relationships you had, he felt like it was a business I could be successful in. So I would have to say he was, it turned out that, he gave me some good advice there.
Yeah, apparently an eye for talent.
There you
go.
go.
I'll say this, right? Because David talked about how unique, he wanted to go to Texas to be unique or different, whatnot. And David is taking a completely different path to stardom than most people. And like you say, talk about the first year internship. I'll say, David's maybe the best football agent ever, but he might have been one of our worst interns ever that first year. And it's because he didn't want to go get lunches. He didn't want to clean the fridge. He didn't want to do all those things that, we want interns to do to prove themselves, right? And say, hey, you're going to do whatever it takes to be successful. And this is part of the pecking order. But you were kind of against that. And why was that?
I think, again, when I first got here, I never really wanted to be an agent. I had no intention. So I think, now that I look back at it, a lot of times when you're interning, it's like, hey, you have a goal in mind. Like, hey, I really want to be an agent, so I'm willing to do A, B, and C to become an agent, right? And you understand You have to put in the work. For me, it was like, okay, I'm going to come here and see what it's like, and I don't like it, right? It's not what I want to do. I didn't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Yep. So I think for me, that's probably what it was. It was just, it wasn't something I was really interested in at the time. It was more something I was doing because, somebody gave me the opportunity, and I wanted to kind of test it out. So I think that was probably what it was.
Well, you did two internships. He did the first one, and it didn't go great. The second one, Kess took you under his wing. You did well. You had some fun with other interns, and then you wanted to come back. We wanted to have you come back, and I offered you a job. Do you remember what that job offer was?
Yeah, man. I think you wrote it on a napkin after I asked for a job. I'm not sure if you wiped your mouth with that napkin or not.
I do eat a lot. It's a problem.
I don't remember, but Yeah, I mean, coming out of law school, you always go to law school. Any you go to law school, whatever it is, when you have higher education, you assume I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna make a good amount of money. And that wasn't the case, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
I was coming out of law school. I think some, people that were graduating alongside of me were coming out making, $120,000 to $150,000 at the time, and I think the offer was like 50,000.
Yep.
And with a $10,000 bonus if you sign a first round pick or something like that. So
Yeah.
it wasn't, what I was hoping for, I guess, when I started law school. But at the same time, by then, I had realized it's something I do want to do. And I felt like I was going to be successful. So I wasn't really worried about kind of what the initial starting pay was, because I knew where I would be in a few years. I had, had that faith and belief in myself that I could do it.
What year was that?
That would have been 2000. The end of 2010 is when I graduated law school. So somewhere in there, end of 2010, early 2011.
So 14 years ago, you're making $50,000. If you ever got a first round pick, we give you a $10,000 bonus, right?
Had a lot of first round picks since then too.
Yeah. We won't go into how much we have to pay him today, but like the AJ, we talk about the salary cap and like going from Drew Bledsoe to Dak Prescott and everything. Like if you started David to David, it's been pretty impressive, and we'll get into that. But AJ, why don't you tell us a little bit why we have to pay David so much money nowadays?
Yeah. So, I mean, David's success in the industry has been documented pretty much everywhere in the sports media, right? But to look at just his record-breaking deals that he's done in his career, from Earl Thomas to Kelechi Osemele, Jordan Love, Deshaun Watson, who we're going to talk about today, Jalen Ramsey, Derwin James, Jalen twice. I know there's more of them. I'll just forget. Michael Thomas is another one.
Bobby Wagner, Buda Baker, Derwin James,
Kevin
Antoine
Byard.
Winfield Jr.
We could go down the list. So
we could do a whole podcast just
you can keep
naming
going.
names.
I'm not mad.
all these record-breaking deals, right? But he's also got 25 first-rounders he's represented in the last 12 years. So you can see where it's just these good players year over year that are signing with David because of his expertise and because of the relationship that he builds with these guys coming out. He was also he was the number one sports agent on the Forbes list in 2020. So the most powerful agent in the NFL in 2020. I know that's the first time that an African-American had held that title, and maybe the youngest as well. Is that what it was?
For sure, the youngest as well.
So
my mom was proud.
Yeah.
I always tell people that.
She should
That was
be.
the most important thing of that one. Got to take it home, and mom saw it, and they were always a little doubtful about the business, right? Like, what you mean you're being a sports agent? They didn't really know what it meant. So I think that was kind of the first time they saw it and like, oh, okay, I guess you are doing okay.
Yeah.
So.
And we're here to talk about quarterbacks, but if we were to ever do a safety podcast, we'd probably do 9 of the 10 episodes would all be with David, because he currently has 5 of the top 6 highest paid safeties in the NFL are all represented by David right now. So he's cornered the market there. And in 2024 alone, he negotiated over $1 billion in NFL contracts. Unheard of, never been done before by a single agent, and that's the first time it's ever been done.
Never been done before by probably 90% of the agencies, right? I mean, like you take the 2 or 3 top agents. I mean, you talk to like agencies number 6, like they've done it to $1 billion deals, and David did that, led those negotiations. I want to say that's mind-boggling. And I think, what'd you tell me about that, David? Like, what was your goal when you started?
Man, my goal when I started was just to be able to create, sustain a job and be able to take care of myself. And obviously at some point, my goal's always been, retire my parents. I think for me, that was kind of always a driving force, just seeing everything they had done for us and the work they put into it, and maybe not being paid what they should have been being paid, with everything they put into it. So for me, it was like, that was my light at the end of the tunnel. My why was, putting my parents in a situation where they could sit back and relax and kind of enjoy, their kids, their grandkids. And, when I got to that point is when I really felt like, okay, yeah, this has worked out.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's AJ, AJ, you've been in the business for a long time. I've been on it 24 years. Like, I've never seen anything like David, anyone like David or a career like David, right? I mean, you think about, like, he started 14 years ago. What about, like, as an intern as a first-year associate making $50,000 a year, he had no idea if he'd ever signed a first rounder. And then what he's done and how he's done it and that's what we get into a little bit, like how he's done it is more impressive to me than what he's done. And again, we have agents out there who have no integrity, will cheat, will do that, and they haven't got to that level. David did this with a complete integrity, buying into the team, supporting the team, and always putting his family first, and then also putting athletes first. Like it's been remarkable. So it's Do you ever sit back and think about it?
And that's funny, man. I have that conversation with, a lot of friends all the time. In this business, you don't really have time to sit back and enjoy it, right? Because it's literally, it never ends, right? It's an ever-flowing business, and you don't really appreciate the wins. You only feel the losses. I always tell people, right? Because if you're recruiting, a player and his family, and at some point, you're talking to the player and the family so much, they become a part of your, extended family. And so when you sign them, it's like, okay, that's an expectation. Like, I've been dealing with this player family, like they're part of my extended family for a year, 2 years. It's kind of becomes kind of an expectation. I think it's the ones that you miss out on that really bother you. Therefore, there's no real time for you to kind of wait and kind of smell the roses, as they say, I guess.
Yep.
It's an interesting industry. But I've been blessed. I've been lucky. I work with a lot of good families and clients, obviously, and they're really the reason why I've been able to be so successful.
And obviously, we're not going to get into private contract details and how your compensation and whatnot, but I will say we've done 4 or 5 employment contracts together. And every single time, including at the beginning when you said you take $10,000 for every, like every time you have said, I don't want the guaranteed money. I don't want, I just want to bet on myself. Just let me bet on yourself. At one point, I had offered you equity in the company. Like, hey, Murph, I don't know if that equity is worth anything. I know I after that upon you for that, I want to rely upon myself. Now you an equity partner, and we're very proud of that. But what convinced you to just keep betting on yourself? And you won every bet. You did much better at this than you did in Vegas. But why did you do that?
Man, I think for me, I always had the mindset that if you're successful in something, you're going to always wish you would have bet on yourself, right? But if you don't bet on yourself and you don't do well, you're going to be out of a job anyway, right? So, taking a little bit of guaranteed money or taking what you feel like is a safe bet, yeah, it lasts only for so long, and then you're going to be, if you don't produce, you're going to be out the door. So for me, it was like, I know I am going to produce, and if that's the case, then it's always going to be best to bet on myself. And not only that, but it keeps you hungrier, right? I didn't ever want to get to a place of being complacent because I knew there was guaranteed this, or I knew I was going to have this. For me, it was always staying hungry, and the competition part of it. Honestly, man, I don't even think at this point I've been blessed, over the years that it's not really about the money anymore. It's more about the competition now. I want to be the best. I want to represent the best. I want to get my guys the best contracts. So everything's about being the best. It's no longer a financial decision for me. And I'm lucky to be able to say that. But for me, it's like I said, man, every year, I want my clients to be able to look at me and say, hey, obviously I'm lucky to work with the guys I work with, but I also want the guys I work with to be like, hey, I'm excited that I work with David, right? Because I know he's going to maximize every opportunity that comes across the table for me, whether, it's on the field, off the field, contracts, whatever it may be. So for me, it's the competition part about it. It's about trying to be the best at this point. And that's why, I'm always bet on myself.
Yeah. I know. I mean, another future podcast could bring equity partner Todd Franson, who's also been ranked Forbes #1 in the past. And I know when we talked about bringing him in, it was very important to us that you were okay with that. And I remember you saying, like, I want the team to be the best, right? I want to win team championships, but I also like working with him will push you to be better. And I think you've enjoyed working with Todd, and you guys have that competition, but it's worked out well.
No, for sure, man. Todd is somebody that I always looked at, in the industry. There's always a few guys you look at and you're always like, man, I wonder, what drives him, what causes him to work so hard. Especially Todd's done phenomenal. I'm sure he doesn't do it for the money anymore either. He's done really well for himself. So just being around other guys like that, iron sharpens iron, picking his brain on how he kind of looks at things, how he, when he talks to teams, what indicators does he use to know whether he's going to, negotiate this way or that, whatever it may be, right? So for me, I'm constantly learning. I hope to think, I like to think that he does the same with me, and obviously the other agents here at Athletes First as well. But for me, like I said, I think at the end of the day, it honestly just comes down to the competition at this point in my career.
Yep.
And wanting to work with the best and kind of do the best contracts.
Yep. No, we could go. I mean, I have 1,000 stories we get into with David, mostly good, some funny, but it's the quarterback series. So we want to talk about the quarterbacks. And David, the one thing I give you mad props for is you were, even at a younger age, you're always very strategic. Like, you were always very deliberate and purposeful in how are you going to build this dynasty of yours. And I remember at one point you saying, listen, I can't be Forbes #1 if I don't represent quarterbacks. Do you remember? Did you remember that strategy?
For sure. No, that's super important. I mean, if you look historically at the guys that are considered, the best agents in the business or the most powerful agent, however you want to kind of, create that ranking, it's always guys that have had quarterbacks and that work with quarterbacks. And it makes sense, right? Because quarterbacks are kind of the face of teams, A, and B, they get paid the most, right? So, you're going to have to work with those guys if you want to consider yourself on the Mount Rushmore of the business. So for me, that was super important. And when I first got in the business, unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of African-American agents that were representing quarterbacks. I could be wrong, but I don't know that there was an African-American agent that had more than one first-round pick, ever at quarterback, right? So for me, it was important. And I knew it would be a challenge because, again, it's not the norm. Quarterbacks kind of, signed with, there was a certain few agents that all the quarterbacks signed with. So that was super important. And, over the years, I've been super lucky. My first quarterback actually was Brandon Bridge from South Alabama, who gave me the opportunity. Great kid. I still talk to him to this day.
From Toronto? Was he from Toronto originally?
Toronto, yeah. He told me the other day he's going to name his first son after me. So I'm waiting to see if he does it or not. But Brandon's my guy. But yeah, man, he gave me an opportunity. And then the quarterback, my second quarterback, who really was a guy that's a household name, obviously Deshaun Watson, who's coming out of Clemson. Yeah. And he was a big time recruit, at the time, arguably the best player in the country. And met him a few times, and that was my, for me, it was like, man, this is a guy that I get along with. It's a guy that I think is going to be an elite player. Comes from a phenomenal family, and he was really the first quarterback that gave me the opportunity, and that kind of allowed me then to kind of continue to work with quarterbacks. And at this point now, man, I had a few guys.
You skipped over a little bit. Like Deshaun Watson wasn't just a very good call. I mean, AJ, tell us about what Deshaun did in college.
Yeah, I mean, he was only a starter for the 2 full seasons. He's a Heisman finalist both of those years. He's an All-American. And then his final season of college football, he goes on to, at the time, Alabama was kind of a juggernaut, right? He goes on to beat them in the national championship in Tampa, Florida. And you're not allowed to sign a college player until he's done playing college football, right? Mm-hmm. So, I know you had been recruiting him leading up to that. But then when do you actually sign Deshaun?
So Deshaun was interesting, actually. He was, I would say he's the one guy that, I don't say that, I did not think I was going to sign Deshaun, right? I met him prior to the season, had some dialogue with him, and he kind of went ghost.
David, let me jump in there for a second, just to set the tone for listeners. Like you said, that there's some super agents out there who kind of represent all the quarterbacks, right? I mean, you had a Tom Conn, and you had Dave Dunn, right? You had Lee Steinberg in the past, and they represent most of the quarterbacks. And you had one quarterback who was a great guy, but he wasn't a first-round pick, mm-hmm. right? And so, and you're relatively young in the business as well. And so when you said that you're recruiting Deshaun Watson, that's awesome. He's the best player in college football right now. He just won a championship. Like, good luck to you. If you get him, that's great, and we'll support you any way we can. But that was that was not like, as you sit here now, any quarterback in the league should want to sign with you, right? They should be calling you. But back then, that was an uphill battle. I mean, a huge uphill battle.
For sure.
So I just want to set the scene a little bit.
No, for sure. Like I said, it was it was the first time I had went after a quarterback that was as highly, ranked or, was, like you said, he was the face of college football at the time, right? Yep. So spoke to him a few times prior to the season, and Deshaun kind of locked in during the season. And I didn't know that. I just thought he obviously didn't like me, right? Because he stopped texting me back the whole season. But I get a text from him. What was that? Probably a week, about 4 or 5 days before the national championship game. And he had probably replied to 2 or 3 of my texts during the season. So I don't want to say he didn't hit me back at all. So I probably had text back and forth with him twice over a 6-month period. And he asked me, was I coming to the national championship game? And I was like, sure, if you're inviting me. He's like, yeah, you should come.
I get Justin to approve it, but yeah.
He was like, you should come. So I was like, oh yeah, for sure, I'm there then, right? So I hurry up and book a flight. I jump on a flight. I get there, and then after the game, obviously they beat Alabama. He's the MVP of the game. I'm sure it was one of the highlights of his career, right? Winning a national championship for Clemson, and I'm sitting after the game wondering, should I text him? Should I wait? Obviously, it's a big moment for him. I don't want to kind of interfere with, I'm sure he has family time going on. So he texts me to ask me to come up to the room, and I get up to the room, and it's him and his mom and his aunt, just family sitting around. And I walk in, I'm like, hey, how you doing? I go to introduce myself, and he says, hey, this is David, this is my agent. And I'm just as shocked as everybody else in the room, right? I'm like, oh. So again, it's a moment I'll never forget, and he gave me that opportunity. He was the first person to give me that opportunity. And, I don't know that he knows even how much it means to me. Being given that opportunity was huge, and, it's led to other quarterbacks, and, no, it's been awesome.
it was probably one of the best decisions he made. I mean, you've done a phenomenal job with him, but like at the time, did he explain why?
Well, yeah, he told me he knew after we spoke a couple of times before the season started that he wanted to go with me, but in his mind, he didn't think to tell me that, and he was he wanted to lock in on the season. He was focused. The prior year, they had got pretty far. I forgot who they beat. I think they might have beat.
I think they had lost to Alabama in the national championship.
Was it national?
The year prior.
Yeah. So they had gotten far and lost to Bama in the national championship. So I think for him, he was all in on football, and kind of that was his focus. And we sometimes we lose track as agents. Like, players have a million things going on, right? They're not always thinking about who my representation is going to be. It's so far away for them. So for him, he's like, yeah, this is who I'm going with. But in his mind, it's like, how do I need to lock in and make sure I give my all to Clemson. And that's what he was doing. And, he thought, he looking back at it, he's like, oh, yeah, I probably should have let you know. So I'm like, yeah, that would have been helpful. That would have, saved some heartache a little bit during the season, right? But no, it was awesome. Like I said, I mean, I could never, repay him for the opportunity. And, yeah.
Well, that decision changed your life,
for sure.
Right? And then having you as his agent has changed his life, as we're going to get into the next episode. And it's been a great relationship. So, David, one thing we do at the end of every episode is we just kind of talk about what we learned through the episode. And I usually go first because AJ takes a little bit longer to think about it. Then you go last, so you get the line. But I'm I don't want to get emotional on this, but I will. Like, what I've learned, and I've learned from working with you for a long time, and I'm a lot older than you, but just watching you in the way you do things, like. My lesson learned, again, just listening to you here talking, like you have such a unbelievable belief in yourself, and I think that probably comes from your parents when you're younger. And you just have integrity, and you have a purpose, and you march towards that purpose. And I think the lesson I learned is like, hey, in life, if we want to reach the top of our profession, top of our family, be the best dad we can, be the best husband we can, like you just have to walk straight and narrow and never veer from who you are. And that's one thing I said in an article before, like David is David everywhere he is. Sometimes I wish you weren't. Sometimes I wish, but like David is always David, and you always know what you're going to get, and you don't have to guess what he's thinking. You don't have to, did he really mean that? Like, you are who you are, and you found out who you are at such a young age. And I've seen it change over the years and develop. Like you said, maybe you get water for people sometimes, but like, I am so impressed with just that you've always known who you are. You never change, no matter what. And your dedication to your family, to your clients, to your children now, it's second to none. It is awesome. And I've told you many times, I couldn't be more grateful to you, but also proud of you and happy for you that you've created the life you have, which is second to none,
for
man.
Sure.
So that's a lesson you've taught me over the last 15 years and again today. So I appreciate that, man.
Thank you.
I'm going to be a little less sentimental. I'm going to say...
Let's talk about the numbers, how much money you make because you work with them. Yeah.
I don't think I necessarily believe in destiny, but I think you are destined to do this job, like to the point where you didn't want it multiple times. Like you say, when you were in school, like didn't know what a sports agent wasn't interested in it. You got introduced to one of the biggest sports agencies in the NFL, and you didn't like it. You went back to law school, didn't think about doing it the next summer. And then it took them another time of saying, hey, David, come do this. Then you finally, kind of opened your eyes to it, like, okay, maybe I'll do this. But you didn't seem real interested in it. It almost feels like you were destined to do it. And then once you actually applied yourself to it, it was, to the moon from there.
Well, I've never thought of it like that. That's pretty cool way to think about it. Yeah.
I would also say, like, this industry needed David Mulugheta. We needed more African-American agents and people who can work with quarterbacks. And I think that there was a great need for someone like you, did things the right way. And, you've changed our industry, right? It's not just your life. You've changed our industry. So it's amazing. We'll get into some stories on how I remember our Raiders meeting about Kalichi, but we'll get to those stories later. But what about you?
No, I think I agree with what you just said, right? It's, a lot of times it's about representation. And for me, there was not a lot of representation coming into the business. And, that's probably why I didn't want to do it, because I had never seen people like me do it. And like you said, I think since then, and obviously I won't take credit for it myself, and there's been some other really good African-American agents since then. Now you see there are a lot more African-American agents that are doing a phenomenal job in the business as well. So now, I'm proud to be one of those, I don't even want to say early guys, right? Because you have guys like Eugene Parker who kind of got the godfather of being agents for African-Americans. But, in this era, like, one of the guys that I think have made it, something where other people have looked and said, hey, I see people that look like me doing it. So I'm happy to be part of that group. So no, I could not be more appreciative of you guys giving me the opportunity coming out of college. No, man, I love what I do.
Yep. Well, I'm sure your parents are still very proud of you.
For sure. And that's most important.
Well, we're going to come back next episode. We're going to bring David back, and we're going to talk about the contracts he's negotiated for Deshaun Watson, and and some of those record-breaking deals that he's done, and we look forward to it. So thanks, David. We appreciate it. Good luck with the autograph seekers on the way out.
You're wild.
We'll talk to you next time.
No doubt.